Hi everyone, Mr. Silbaugh here, and this is my take on Unit 9, Lesson 2. So, in a review from last time, we talked about GUIs, and you got to know a little bit about what GUIs are and do. They're an easy way to make web pages without knowing the actual HTML code. You may notice that though this is the case for this one unit, we spent almost 7 units, talking about how to code in HTML. So there is a strong emphasis on learning how to do HTML code, but primarily the focus in this unit is for those that, if you know the code, you can just use an GUI editor to help you do it. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the coming lessons. Lastly, for the review for this, there are 2 types of GUIs. There's page editors and site management editors. Page editors are used only to manage one single page, whereas a site management can manage the entire site. So the functionality of the GUI HTML editor, you can use it to make web pages. We know this. You can enter and edit text similar to how you would in a word processing application. It's essentially whenever you start a new document, you're essentially pulling up a blank Word document. Like if you were about to type in it and create like a fancy page, it kind of functions in the same way. You can insert tables, images, bookmarks, links, all of the things that we've talked about in the past few units, and it can be made easier since the HTML code's written for you. So that's one of the big selling points about GUI editors, and as you know, there are good and bad things, and for this lesson, and I think the next lesson, we focus mostly on the good, but we are going to talk about some of the negatives of GUIs in the coming lessons. Here are some of the features. This is just a very, very brief list on the next 2 slides. One of the main selling points is the templates and wizards. What this does, a wizard, it's not that person that makes those spells for you. In a computer program, a wizard is a step-by-step series of instructions or guides to help you kind of create something that you want for your web page, or if you're using a wizard in like Microsoft Word to create something, it's a step-by-step and it does it automatically for you. That's why it's called a wizard. Templates, as we've talked about, those are pre-made things that you can use. In this case, it'd be a pre-made page that you just fill out your content in. You can customize pages with a set of pre-made templates in a GUI editor. It makes it look like you coded this nice fancy web page, and here all you did was just pick whichever template you want. You can also have different text styles like fonts, sizes, colors, format like italic, bold, the usual, centering your text, left align, right align. But as the text cautions you, make sure you pick fonts that are capable of being rendered in all browsers. Just because you use a fancy editor to make your web page doesn't necessarily mean it will always show up properly on someone else's screen. You can also use icon bars. These are graphic icons that are used instead of your text-based menus. You may remember that we talked about how to make images as hyperlinks and how you can use images to make like a link bar. So this does it for you without having to do all the code. The images in this case are easier to insert. You don't need to refer to them. You literally just put them into the document and they'll show up. Hypertext links can be used to make hyperlinks and to pages and files within your website. Some of these tools are, we've talked about how to do them and how to code them. This does it a lot easier for you because it essentially does it all for you. Some other features, you can import HTML pages. You can open pages from the web and save them, like saving the necessary code. And you can also import the pages into a collection. Now, I'm sure there are boundless legal issues in doing this. You want to make sure that if you do go this route, you either own the pages or you created them yourself before you go ahead and start pulling pages from other people's websites. Table creation, it's a lot easier to make a table. You essentially draw the table and it does it for you. You can easily create a table or change its layout. There's also spelling check. It will automatically check your spelling for you, but you have to be careful because it's not always correct. You need to proofread, make sure you're saying the right things, especially if you have like a specific brand or trademark or slogan for your company that you may design for. You want to make sure that that's spelled correctly because it may correct it for you automatically and you could be in serious trouble. Lastly, one of the other main selling points here is publishing. All it takes is a simple button that you click and it will start putting your pages on a server. You don't have to worry about uploading it or anything. This is a considerably easier way of publishing a web page. That in mind, W3C has some guidelines for us in GUI editors. The text brings this up. They are the Authoring Tool Accessibility Guidelines, ATAG. They don't call them GUI guidelines. There are 7 points that help determine the suitability of a GUI editor for developers with disabilities. In this case, it's more on the focus of the developer using the GUI editor than what's actually being designed. Because remember, and it's a good point that this is brought up because if you think about it, the W3C guidelines are going to cover all websites regardless of how they are made. This is to cover people who have disabilities and who are creating web pages while using a GUI editor. There are 2 categories that these rules fall into, the 7 points: the ability of the GUI editor to make the proper code, and the usability of the GUI editor by a disabled person creating a web page. The text does cover these 7 points. I skipped them for now. If you are curious about them, you can read more at w3.org /tr/ATAG20. Those are the current guidelines, and you can find them there if you want to review them. They're also covered in the text, so you might want to take a look at them very briefly. They do make a lot of sense about what you should really cover whenever you a GUI is being used by someone who may have a disability. So when you are designing, of course, the whole focus of this course too, we've always touched back on users with disabilities, people who need to be able to access your web pages that you create and you design. So some users may not be able to use a mouse when they're navigating your page. Make sure your pages allow users to use the keyboard or other inputs instead. That's something that GUI editors don't always necessarily include whenever you are designing, so you need to be very careful. And you may need larger text on your pages. You know, it's very easy in HTML code to go forth and change that and make it a universal change across all of your pages. But in a GUI editor, you don't have that universality in doing your pages. So you may actually have to go back and forth and change things each time. So keep that in mind if you do use a GUI editor. Finally, in summary for this lesson, GUI editors have a lot of the same tools as HTML, and they make it easier to create web pages than just by using the HTML code. Remember, a GUI editor will code the web page for you without you having to do the code at all. You just type in what you need to type in, and it does it for you. You must consider users with disabilities when designing your web pages. This is regardless of whether you use a GUI editor or you design the web page yourself from scratch. You must always think of the people who are going to be viewing your web page. All right, that's going to do it for this lesson.